So the good question is why is demand below normal? And frankly, I don't know all the answers. We can guess at some of them, and people have theories. First of all, the easiest thing to explain is the investor demand. That drops when prices go up. That's just the normal reaction. But usually when investors step back, owner-occupiers fill the gap. And we haven't really seen them step up. Many articles talk about how bad affordability is, but that's not relative to last year. Affordability is actually still, on a long-term basis, quite good, and we'll look at that in a moment. It's not poor, but it's not as cheap and it's not as easy to get a home as it was last year. Many people are kicking themselves that they could have got a loan at maybe 3.5% and now only at 4.5%. Again, 4.5% is really cheap when you look at the last 50 years. So maybe I can understand a 25-year-old complaining, but anybody over 30 ought to know that anything up to 6% is still very cheap. But one of the really strange things is household formation is weak. And not a lot of people talk about this, but this is a number that's produced by the Census Bureau. What they do is every month they do a telephone survey and they try and estimate how many housing units in the country are occupied. Doesn't matter whether they're owned or rented or whether they're mobile homes or condos or what. They just look at how many occupied homes do we have, and each one is called a household. Doesn't matter what type of household we have, 20 people or one person in it, but it's an occupied unit. And they do that each month, and then they compare it with the year before and say, have we created households? And the strange thing about the latest number for December is it's negative. We have fewer homes occupied in the US in December than we had in the previous December, which, even though we've got population growing, it's kind of strange. We've got a lower birth rate, but it still exceeds the death rate. We've got immigration, which is in excess of people emigrating, and yet fewer homes are occupied. That means people are living more densely, more people on average living per house. And we can see examples of that, but it's really difficult to actually go and measure that. We all know that people who in their youth are staying with their parents longer. Many of them don't have jobs, or if they have a job, it's not enough to pay for the rent of a separate place, and it's cheap to live with mom. They're staying single longer. They're having children later in life. And generally speaking, that sort of millennial generation is just putting things off that the previous generations did earlier. So that tends to lower demand. And I think one of the key reasons that we've got this low demand is to do with the fact that they have lots of financial issues that previous generations didn't struggle with. The level of student loans is very high. Many of them are still paying them off, so the idea that they want to take out a mortgage on top of that is kind of scary. And the market is much scarier than it was 10 years ago because they've seen a crash. And somebody who's, say, 26 is said, well, didn't work out to my parents very well buying a house. They got foreclosed and ended up with big problems. I don't want that to happen to me. All my friends are renting, so I'm going to rent and see what happens. They will write it off as greater flexibility. After all, millennials tend to change their employer much more than previous generations, so they might need to move. That means renting is more appropriate for their perceived lifestyle. So we've got a new generation that prefers renting to buying, when previous generations, particularly the baby boomers, preferred buying to renting. So that's a significant challenge to realtors to change the mindset there, because those people, they will say, well, yes, homeownership is good in theory, maybe one day, but that's no use to the market if it wants to actually create more demand this year. So there's a number of reasons, and these may not be the key ones. You may have your own theories, but I think the millennial generation is one of the keys to understanding why the market is slow for demand once you lose the investors. So let's knock off some of the objections. First of all, interest rate. Yes, they've gone up from 3.35 to 4.43. These are the Freddie Mac numbers, by the way, month to month. And they start in 1971, so you can see that 4.43 is still dirt cheap. They actually had a peak of 18.45%. Anybody remember that? That was a long time ago. But in that year, we actually built more homes than we did last year. So it did not kill the market. And rising interest rates do not, of themselves, kill the housing market. What tends to control the housing market is how many loans get approved or denied, not the rate. So, a young couple starting out buying a home, they may, not like having to pay a higher interest rate, but they like that a whole lot better than having their application denied. And what we've got at the moment is still relatively strict lending guidelines. Most of the underwriters require a lot of documentation, a reasonably good credit score, and no nasty black marks in your recent credit history. Go back 12 years and virtually anybody can qualify, so a very different availability at the moment. But the interest rate on itself is vastly overrated as a reason for why demand is low. Affordability. This is another external number. This one's actually put together by the home builders with the Wells Fargo's help, and it's based on pricing and interest rates compared with the average, or actually the median earnings of a local resident. So this is for Phoenix, Mesa, Glendale, and it tells us that about 70% of the homes that are for sale are affordable to somebody who is earning the median income. That's pretty good, actually. If you think about it, 70% of the MLS listings, the median income can pay for. Now, it's not as good as 86. That's crazy. That was a good sign that we were at a very good buying point back in 2011. And 26.6 is incredibly low. That was a good clue that we were in a bubble back in 2006. 70 point anything is very good compared with, say, the average Californian. Because if we were doing this for anywhere in California, apart from the desert areas, we'd be at something like 30, not 70. So we are still very affordable, and you wonder, well, why don't more Californians move? But affordability is not a reason for demand being low. Clearly, pricing perception is a reason. There's a lot of people, almost everybody talking to you, saying, what do you think about home prices? Oh, they've gone up too much. They're expensive now. And so when you get prices changed by 60%, it certainly seems expensive. But remember, that's just because they were too low before, not because they were too high now. They're quite reasonable now. But perception is important. If we look at the delinquency situation, Arizona's looking in great shape. We're at 5.5%. We're in the dark blue zone, which means we're one of the states with the lowest levels of delinquency. That's a surprise to many people because if you go back to 2010, we were number 4 worst state. So there's been an enormous improvement. And the reason that there's been such an improvement is we are very efficient at doing foreclosures and short sales. Far more efficient because we don't use the courts and we don't use attorneys to do short sales either. There are many states where if you want to do a short sale, attorneys have to get involved. And therefore you get very low short sale success. Why is that? Because attorneys get paid by the hour. Right? How do realtors get paid? They don't get paid by the hour, do they? They only get paid if the short sale succeeds. So you get a huge success rate with a state that uses realtors and a very low success rate when you use those expensive attorneys. But you can see that most of the West, with the exception of Nevada, is in great shape. And the problems are still in Florida and the Southeast and much of the Northeast. Florida, however, is no longer number 1. Mississippi is the worst state now for delinquency. And New Jersey has actually gone into second place. numbers is we've got enormous numbers of rental homes. And this happens to be Gilbert, but it could be just as easily be Glendale or Peoria. Across the whole valley, it's swathed in red dots, and each red dot is a single family home that is rented. Lots of people haven't really woken up to this, but we had 230,000 families went through a foreclosure in just 5 years. That's like 1 in 4 people, 1 in 4 families. And when they got foreclosed, they didn't go and leave Arizona and live somewhere else. They stayed here. They had to move into a rental. There weren't enough apartments for those people, so basically all of those foreclosed homes, or a very large number of them, got turned into rentals, and then moved into London. Very often the same neighborhood that they used to live. And the big question is, what's going to happen to all these people over the next 5 years? Are they going to repair their credit and get back into home ownership, or are they going to stay renting? Last year there was a lot of optimism because quite a few of these had been foreclosed so long ago that they were now eligible for a loan again, and they started buying homes. But that wave really hasn't been building up, it's been sort of dissipating. There was an initial wave of enthusiasm, and now we're still left with a lot of people who either, because they got so beat up by the experience of home ownership, they don't want to do it again, or they haven't repaired their credit or gathered the down payment here and they need to get in home ownership. There's a lot of pent-up demand there, but at the moment, we actually have the opposite situation in rentals that we have in resales. We have low supply and high demand. What does that mean? It means rents are probably going to go up, but prices will go down. I don't think either are going to move very far, but the trend is in different directions. Eventually, many of these will come back into the market, but it's going to take some time. It's not going to happen immediately. And by the way, don't believe the press when they say these are mostly owned by institutions. They are not. The institutional investors own about 5% of these cryptos. 95% of them are owned by regular folks like you and me. Local people who chose to buy a house instead of putting money into their retirement fund. It's very popular in Arizona to invest any savings you've got into real estate. And I know there's a lot of people who maybe 2, maybe 5, maybe even 12 homes is where they put their retirement savings. The nice thing, of course, is you get income as well as appreciation. But you have to be able to stomach the ups and downs of the market. If you look at the home ownership rate, this measures what percentage of the population actually owns the home they live in. We got to a very high number, above 65% in 05, again, because almost anybody could get a loan. It's dropped dramatically since then as people lost their home through foreclosure, and we're now below the long-term average. About 60.5% is the long-term average. We're about 59. We're actually below the national average, which is currently 65.4. This is actually not just for Arizona, this is the whole western region. Unfortunately, the census does not break it down in more detail than that. But this shows there's potential demand out there.